My name is Ryan Carter. I'm 44 years old, and until a few months ago, I believed I was the kind of man bad things didn't happen to. Not because I was lucky, because I worked too hard, planned too carefully, and built too much with my own hands to imagine it all slipping. I own 3 auto repair shops in and around Greenville, Ohio, with a 4th location already in motion. My days started before sunrise and usually ended long after dark, but I liked it that way. I liked the smell of oil and hot metal in the morning, the sound of impact guns from the bays, the neat rows of invoices on my desk by closing time. There was something honest about fixing what was broken. You found the problem, got your hands dirty, and solved it. That kind of thinking shaped everything in my life. At home, I had Emily. We'd been married 13 years. She had a soft voice, careful eyes, and the kind of smile that used to make a room feel smaller, more private, like the rest of the world had stepped back to give us space. We had an 11-year-old daughter, Chloe, who was smart in the quiet way that made adults underestimate her. She liked sketching horses at the kitchen counter while I read contracts and expansion numbers with a cup of coffee going cold beside me. From the outside, we looked solid, maybe even enviable. We lived in a 2-story brick house on the edge of town with a wide front lawn, and a maple tree Chloe insisted was older than the country. Emily kept the inside warm and polished, always smelling faintly of vanilla candles and clean laundry. On Friday nights, we ordered takeout and watched movies in the den. On Sundays, I grilled in the backyard while Chloe chased fireflies and Emily sat on the patio with a glass of wine, one leg crossed over the other, looking like the kind of woman men noticed but knew belonged to someone else. To me, that life felt earned. I wasn't reckless with money. I wasn't careless with family. Every shop I opened, every account I balanced, every late night and early morning had one purpose. I was building something that would outlive me, a business Chloe could inherit if she wanted it, property, stability, a name that meant something in our county. I thought that was what protection looked like. Hard work, routine, loyalty, papers signed in order, a wife who kissed me goodbye at the door, a daughter safe in her room down the hall. Looking back, that was the first mistake. I thought because I valued what I had, the people around me would value it the same way. I had no idea I was standing in the middle of a life already starting to crack, and I was the last one to hear the sound. The first changes were small enough to ignore if you want to keep your life simple. Emily got a new job as a real estate assistant in a small office downtown, and at first I was glad for her. Chloe was older. The house didn't need as much of her time, and Emily said she wanted something of her own again. I told her she should do it. I even bought her a leather planner and a silver pen set the week she started. She kissed me on the cheek and said, "You always know how to make things feel official." For a while, it seemed harmless. Then the late evenings started. At first, it was once a week. A closing ran long. A client needed last-minute documents. Her boss was completely disorganized, and Emily said she was the only one keeping that office from falling apart. I believed her because I had spent my whole life around businesses that depended on one reliable person holding the mess together. Then it became 3 nights a week. Then 4. She'd come home after 7 with her heels in one hand and her purse clutched tight against her side. She would smile, but it always looked delayed, like she was putting on half a second too late. Some nights she said she already ate. Other nights she moved food around her plate and claimed she had a headache. I noticed the perfume before I noticed anything else. Emily had never really worn it. Maybe a little on holidays, maybe at weddings. Suddenly there was a new scent trailing behind her when she passed me in the hallway. Something sharper, expensive, floral with a cold edge to it. It stayed on her coats, her scarves, even the seatbelt in her car. She started dressing differently, too. Nothing dramatic, just too polished for a woman filing paperwork in a local office. Fitted blouses, new heels, earrings she said she'd had for years, even though I had never seen them once in 13 years of marriage. She took longer getting ready in the mornings, standing in front of the bathroom mirror under that bright vanity light, while Chloe ate cereal downstairs, and I checked numbers on my phone. The phone was the part that settled under my skin. Emily used to leave it anywhere. Kitchen counter, couch cushion, bathroom sink. Now it was always face down and always within reach. If a message came in, she would glance at it and tilt the screen away without thinking. At night, she started taking it into the bathroom when she showered. Once, I walked into the bedroom and found her smiling at something on the screen, really smiling, the kind I hadn't seen directed at me in months. The second she noticed me, the expression vanished. "Who's got you so entertained?" I asked. She locked the phone and set it down. "Just work." Then she laughed more. That was the part that bothered me most. Not because she was happy, because none of that happiness seemed to belong to this house. Around me, she was distracted. Around Chloe, she was patient but distant. But every so often, alone in the kitchen or stepping out onto the porch, I'd hear this light, careless laugh like she was living somewhere else for a few seconds. And each time, I felt the same quiet thing settle in my chest. Not proof. Not yet. Just a slow, unwelcome sense that something in my life had started moving out of place, and I was the only one still pretending it hadn't. It happened on a Thursday. I remember the time because I had canceled a supplier meeting that afternoon. One of the shops had a delivery issue, and I handled it faster than expected. By 6:30. I was already driving home, earlier than usual. The sky just starting to dim into that flat gray-blue Ohio gets before sunset. I didn't call Emily. I didn't think I needed to. When I pulled into the driveway, her car was already there. That should have felt normal. Instead, it didn't. The house was quiet when I stepped inside. No TV, no music, just the low hum of the refrigerator and the faint ticking of the clock above the stove. Chloe's backpack was by the stairs, her shoes kicked off near the wall. "Chloe?" I called. "Upstairs," she answered. I loosened my tie, set my keys down, and walked toward the kitchen. That's when I heard Emily. Her voice was inside. It was coming from the backyard. Soft, lower than usual. I stopped without meaning to. The sliding door was cracked open just enough for her words to slip through. I didn't step closer right away. Something in the tone of her voice held me in place. It wasn't how she spoke to me. It wasn't how she spoke to anyone in this house. It was careful, intimate. "I told you this weekend works," she said quietly. There was a pause. I could hear faint movement, gravel shifting under her shoes, maybe the edge of the patio chair. "No, he won't know. He's busy. He always is." My hand tightened slightly around nothing. Another pause, then a soft laugh. That same laugh I'd been hearing in pieces for weeks. "I miss you, too." Everything in me went still. Not anger. Not yet. Just silence. I stepped closer to the door, slow enough that it didn't make a sound. Through the narrow gap, I could see her back. She was standing near the edge of the patio, one hand wrapped around her phone, the other resting lightly against her neck like she was holding something in place. "I'll pack light," she continued. 2 nights. Maybe 3 if we can stretch it. Another pause. Her head tilted slightly, listening. Then, softer, almost a whisper. "I love you." The words didn't echo. They didn't feel dramatic. They just landed. Clean, precise, final, in that moment. Every small detail from the past few weeks aligned without effort. The late nights, the perfume, the phone, the distance. It all fit together so easily it almost felt obvious. I didn't feel the need to hear the other side of the call. I didn't need confirmation. I already had it. I stepped back before she turned around. Quiet, controlled. The same way I moved through a shop when something expensive was about to break, and panic would only make it worse. Upstairs, Chloe was sitting cross-legged on her bed, drawing. "You're home early," she said. "Yeah," I answered just as evenly. Things wrapped up. I leaned against her doorframe for a second longer than usual, watching her pencil move across the page. My mind wasn't racing. It was organizing, breaking things down, identifying the problem. Because standing there, listening to my daughter hum quietly to herself, I understood something with absolute clarity. My life hadn't just cracked. It had already been broken for a while. And now I knew exactly where to start. I didn't confront her that night. I didn't ask questions. I didn't slam doors. I didn't even look at her differently when she came back inside 10 minutes later, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear like nothing had happened. "Hey," she said, soft casual. "Hey," I answered. We ate dinner as usual. Chloe talked about school. Emily nodded in the right places, added small comments, played her role perfectly. If I hadn't heard what I heard, I might have believed it. That was the unsettling part. How normal she could still look. That night, I lay awake longer than usual, not staring at the ceiling, not replaying her words. Planning. I'd spent my entire adult life solving problems step by step. You don't tear apart an engine in anger. You study it. You understand how it fits together. Then you take it apart in a way that guarantees it won't run again until you decide it should. This was no different. Over the next 2 weeks, I said nothing. I watched. I adjusted my schedule without telling her. I came home early twice, left later other days, and paid attention to patterns. When she texted, when she smiled at her phone, when she seemed distant, and when she seemed almost energized. I didn't touch her phone. I didn't need to. Not yet. Instead, I started with something simpler. Dates, times, small inconsistencies. The kind of details most people overlook because they don't want to see what they're adding up to. Our anniversary was coming up. 13 years. Emily mentioned it casually one evening while folding laundry. We should do something small this year, she said. Nothing big. I looked up from my laptop. Yeah, I replied. Something quiet. She smiled, relieved, like she didn't have to pretend to care too much. That made the decision easy. On the day of our anniversary, I closed the shop early. I went home before either of them. The house was empty, still almost staged. I took my time setting everything up. Candles on the dining table. Not too many, just enough to make the light soft. Her favorite wine, the one she used to save for special occasions, before special became routine. I cooked dinner myself. Nothing complicated. Steak, roasted vegetables, the way she liked them slightly overdone. The smell filled the house slowly, steady, controlled. Then I sat down at the table and wrote the letter. 1 page. No accusations. No emotion. Just facts. Dates she came home late. The night in the backyard. The exact words she said. He won't know. He's busy. I wrote them carefully, making sure there was no room for denial, no space for confusion. At the end, one line, I know everything. I folded the paper once and placed it on her plate. By the time Emily walked through the door, everything was ready. She stopped when she saw the table. Oh, she said, a small smile forming. You did all this? I nodded. It's our anniversary. For a second, she looked almost touched. Then she sat down, picked up the letter, and I watched completely still as her world began to come apart in silence. She didn't notice me watching her. That was the first thing I registered. Her eyes moved across the page once, then again, slower. The color drained from her face in stages, not all at once. Her fingers tightened slightly on the paper, just enough to leave a faint crease down the middle. The room stayed quiet. No music, no clinking glasses, just a low flicker of candlelight and the sound of her breathing changing. Ryan, she started, but the word didn't finish properly. I didn't interrupt. I sat across from her, hands resting calmly on the table, exactly where they had been since she walked in. I didn't lean forward. I didn't raise my voice. I just watched her reach the last line. I know everything. Her shoulders dropped. For a moment, she didn't move at all. Then the letter slipped from her fingers onto the plate, right next to the untouched fork. She swallowed. This isn't. I tilted my head slightly, not questioning, just waiting. That was enough. Her composure cracked faster than I expected. Tears came, sudden and uneven. Not loud, not dramatic, just a quiet collapse inward, like something inside her had been holding pressure for too long and finally gave way. I didn't mean for this to happen, she said, voice breaking. It got out of control. I let a few seconds pass before I spoke. How long? She hesitated. That told me more than the answer would. 5 months, she admitted. 5 months. I nodded once, like I was confirming a number on an invoice. And his name? She closed her eyes briefly. Lucas. The name meant nothing to me, just another variable. He thinks we're separated, she added quickly, almost offensively, like it mattered. I told him things were already over between us. That was the first time I felt something shift. Not anger. Clarity. So you lied to him, I said. Her eyes snapped up. Not like that. I didn't tell him everything. I held her gaze, steady, and you lied to me. She didn't answer that. Didn't need to. The silence filled the space between us heavier than anything she could have said. I was going to end it, she whispered after a moment. I just needed time. I nodded again, slower this time. Of course you did. She reached for my hand across the table, but I moved mine back just enough that her fingers met empty air. The motion was small, controlled, final. That's when the panic started to show. Ryan, please, she said, leaning forward now. We can fix this. We built too much to just throw it away over a mistake. A mistake. I repeated the word in my head once, not because I believed it, but because I wanted to remember how easily she used it. I'm not throwing anything away, I said calmly. Her breathing hitched. Then what are you saying? I leaned back slightly in my chair, studying her the same way I would a machine that had failed without warning. I'm saying, I replied, my voice even, you don't actually know what I have. The tears stopped. Not completely, but enough. Confusion replaced them. Fear followed right behind it. And for the first time that night, Emily wasn't reacting to what she'd done. She was reacting to what I hadn't shown her yet. She stared at me like she was trying to measure how much damage had already been done. What do you mean? She asked, her voice quieter now, careful. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I reached down beside my chair and picked up a thin black folder I had placed there earlier. I set it on the table between us, right next to the plate she hadn't touched. Her eyes dropped to it, then back to me. Ryan, she said slowly, what is this? I opened the folder, turned it toward her, and slid the first page across the table. Printed messages. Not screenshots. Not something easy to deny. Recovered data. Her face changed the second she saw the first line. I thought you didn't touch my phone, she said quickly. I didn't. I replied, that was the truth. At least, technically. I hired someone who knows how to access things you think are gone. Her fingers trembled slightly as she picked up the page. I watched her eyes move across the text. Dates, times. Entire conversations she clearly believed had been deleted. You said you were working late. I said evenly. You weren't. She flipped to the next page. Then the next. Each one worse than the last. Messages planning hotel stays. Photos she never sent to me. Conversations that weren't just emotional. They were deliberate, ongoing, structured like a second life running parallel to the one she came home to every night. This isn't all, I continued. She looked up, shaken now. How much is there? I pulled out another set of documents and placed them on top. A second account, I said. Different email, different messaging app, only used on Wi-Fi. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. And a backup phone. That landed. Hard. I never, she started, then stopped herself. There was no point finishing the sentence. We both knew. I found it in your car, I said, under the passenger seat. Powered off. Her composure didn't crack this time. It collapsed. Completely. Tears came back, but different now. Not controlled. Not quiet. Her breathing turned uneven, shallow, like she couldn't get enough air into her lungs. You went through my things, she said, but there was no anger in it, just disbelief. I verified the truth. I corrected. She shook her head, over and over. This isn't what it looks like. I leaned forward slightly, just enough to close the distance between us. Emily, I said calmly, it's exactly what it looks like. Her eyes moved across the pages again, but slower now, not searching for a way out. Realizing there wasn't one. All of it, she whispered. All of it. The room felt smaller. The candles burned lower. And for the first time since this started, there was no version of the story she could reshape, soften, or control. Everything she had hidden was sitting in front of her. Organized. Dated. Final. And I hadn't even shown her the part that would matter most yet. She didn't try to argue after that. Not that night. Emily sat there, staring at the papers like they might rearrange themselves into something less damaging if she just waited long enough. I let the silence stretch until it became uncomfortable, then stood up, cleared my plate, and left everything else exactly where it was. "Ryan," she called after me, her voice thin. I stopped in the doorway, but didn't turn around. "We'll talk tomorrow," I said. Not, "We'll fix this." Not, "We'll figure out." Just that. Tomorrow. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise. Routine hadn't changed. Coffee, emails, numbers. The structure of my life stayed intact, even if everything underneath it had shifted. Emily didn't come downstairs. I didn't check on her. By 9, I was at the shop, going over expansion contracts like any other day. If anyone looked at me, they wouldn't have seen anything different. That was intentional. Problems don't get solved by broadcasting them. They get handled quietly. Around 11, my phone rang. I recognized the number immediately. Daniel Harper, Emily's older brother. I let it ring twice before answering. "Ryan," he said, his tone controlled, professional, the same voice he used in courtrooms. "We need to talk." I figured we would. I replied. A pause. I spoke with Emily. I assumed that too. Another pause. Slightly longer this time. "Look," he continued, lowering his voice just enough to sound reasonable. "This doesn't need to become public. You've built a reputation here. So have we. There's no reason to drag this through court and make it ugly." I leaned back in my chair, watching one of my mechanics roll a tire across the floor through the office window. "It's already ugly," I said. "It doesn't have to stay that way," Daniel replied quickly. "We can settle this quietly. Assets, custody arrangements. Keep it clean, for Chloe if nothing else." There it was. Not concern. Leverage. I let a few seconds pass. "Did Emily tell you everything?" I asked. "Yes," he said too fast. I almost smiled. "No." I corrected. "She didn't." Silence on the other end. Then, sharper now. "Ryan, don't do something you'll regret. Court drags things out. It exposes everything. No one walks away clean." "That's the point," I said calmly. Another pause. He wasn't expecting that. "You're overreacting," he said, the control slipping just a little. "People make mistakes." I thought about the folder. The messages. The second phone. 5 months. "That wasn't a mistake," I said. "That was a system." He didn't respond immediately. Good. That meant he was recalculating. "Think about Chloe," he tried again. "She doesn't need to be caught in the middle of this." I looked down at the file on my desk. He was right about one thing. She didn't, which is why I had already decided how that part would go. "I already have," I said. And that weekend, I sat down with my daughter and told her the truth, carefully, without details she didn't need, without anger, just facts. Because unlike her mother, I wasn't going to build her world on something that couldn't hold. I expected tears, maybe confusion, maybe silence. What I didn't expect was how still Chloe sat when I finished. We were in the living room, late afternoon light coming through the windows, cutting across the carpet in long. She had her sketchbook closed on her lap, both hands resting on top of it like she was holding it in place. I had chosen my words carefully. No unnecessary details. No bitterness. Just the truth in its simplest form. Your mom made choices, I told her, and those choices mean things are going to change. She didn't look at me right away. She stared at the floor for a few seconds, then up at the window, like she was organizing something in her head. Then she asked quietly, "For how long?" That question told me everything. "About 5 months," I answered. She nodded once. No visible reaction, just processing. "Does she still see him?" she asked next. I paused. "Not anymore," I said. "Not after she knows I'm aware." That wasn't entirely the point, but it was enough for now. Chloe finally looked at me. Her expression wasn't broken. It was measured, like she was comparing 2 versions of reality and deciding which one made sense. "Did she lie to you?" she asked. "Yes." Another small nod. Then she looked down at her hands again. "I don't like lying," she said. "I know." A longer pause settled between us. I didn't rush it. This wasn't something you filled with noise. Finally, she took a slow breath. I don't think I trust her, she said. No tears, no anger, just a conclusion. It landed heavier than anything Emily had said the night before. I leaned forward slightly, resting my elbows on my knees. You don't have to decide anything right now. I told her. Things will take time. She shook her head just a little. I already did, she replied. That was the moment I understood something I hadn't planned for. This wasn't just my situation to control. Chloe wasn't reacting like a child caught in the middle. She was choosing, and she had already picked a side. That night, after she went to bed, I sat alone in the kitchen with my laptop open. There was one more piece I needed to confirm. Lucas. A name. Nothing more, so far. But names lead to patterns. Patterns lead to people. It didn't take long. Property records. Social media traces. Cross-reference contacts from the data I already had. And then I found him. Late 30s. Clean record. Stable job. Photos that matched the timeline perfectly. But that wasn't the part that mattered. There was a woman in those photos. Always close to him. Always consistent. Different settings. Same presence. Same ring on her finger. I stared at the screen a few seconds longer than necessary. Then I leaned back in my chair, exhaling slowly. Emily hadn't just built a second life. She had stepped directly into someone else's. And just like mine, that life had no idea what was about to happen. I didn't rush it. That was the difference between reacting and finishing something properly. Monday morning, I sent Lucas an email from one of my business accounts. Neutral tone. Straightforward. I introduced myself as a local shop owner expanding into his area and mentioned I'd seen his name through a shared contact in property development records. I suggested a quick meeting. Coffee, 15 minutes, nothing formal. He replied within 2 hours. Sounds good. Of course it did. Men like him didn't expect problems to arrive politely. We met Wednesday afternoon. A small cafe just off the main road. Quiet. Clean. The kind of place where conversations don't carry far. I got there early. Sat at a corner table with a clear view of the entrance. Black coffee in front of me, untouched. A thin envelope resting beside it. At exactly 2:07, he walked in. I recognized him immediately. Confident posture. Well put together. The kind of man who believed he understood the room the moment he stepped into it. He spotted me, smiled, and walked over. Ryan? He asked, extending his hand. I shook it. Lucas. We sat. He ordered something. I didn't. So, he began casually. You mentioned expansion. I slid the envelope across the table. Before that, I said. He glanced down at it, then back at me. What's this? Open it. He hesitated for half a second. Then he did. The first photo was enough. I watched the exact moment his expression shifted. Subtle, controlled. But there, he flipped to the next page. Then the next. Messages, dates, hotel confirmations. Emily's name, repeated more times than he could ignore. This is, he started, then stopped. Accurate, I said. He looked up at me, sharper now. Why are you showing me this? Because, I replied evenly, you're not the only one who was lied to. Silence. Real silence this time. His jaw tightened slightly as he went back to the pages. Slower now. More careful. She told me she was separated, he said. I know. Another pause. He leaned back in his chair, staring at nothing for a moment, processing. Then he said something I already expected. She's not, is she? No. That landed clean. No room for interpretation. He exhaled through his nose, long and controlled. But I could see it. Everything he thought he understood unraveling in real time. Does she know you're here? He asked. No. He nodded slowly. Then his eyes moved back to the envelope. One more thing. I added. He looked up again. I held his gaze. She's not the only person you owe honesty to. That's when it clicked for him. The woman in the photos. The ring. His fiancée. His face changed again, this time deeper. Not just anger. Damage. You've got to be kidding me, he muttered under his breath. I'm not, I said. He sat there for a long moment, completely still, then gathered the papers back into the envelope with more force than necessary. Thank you, he said finally, but there was no warmth in it, just acknowledgement. I nodded once. That's all this is. I left first, didn't look back, didn't need to, because some things don't require witnessing to understand how they'll end. By that evening, the first call had already been made. By the next day, his fiancée knew. By the end of the week, the engagement was over. And Emily's world didn't collapse all at once. It fell apart piece by piece, in every direction she had tried to keep separate. Work, family, reputation. Everything she built in the dark was now standing in full light, and there was nothing left to control. Court wasn't loud. That's what most people get wrong. There were no dramatic outbursts, no shouting, no slammed fists, just quiet rooms, controlled voices, and decisions that carried weight long after they were spoken. Emily sat across from me, smaller than I remembered, not physically, just reduced. Her lawyer, Daniel, kept his tone sharp, structured, tried to frame things in a way that softened her choices. Words like miscommunication, emotional stress, temporary lapse. He used them carefully, like they could reshape facts if repeated enough times. They couldn't, because I didn't bring emotions into that room. I brought records, the recovered messages, the hidden accounts, the second phone, timelines that aligned too perfectly to dismiss, patterns that showed intent, not accidents. And when it came to Chloe, I didn't need to say much. She spoke clearly, calmly, the same way she had that afternoon in the living room. No anger, just truth. I don't feel safe trusting her right now, she said. That was enough. The ruling wasn't instant, but it was predictable. Primary custody shifted to me. Assets were divided in a way that reflected more than just numbers. It reflected behavior, intent, damage. Emily didn't argue by the end. She didn't fight it. She couldn't. There wasn't anything left to defend. A few months later, she left Ohio. New state, new job, new attempt at a life that didn't have my name attached to it. We didn't speak unless it was necessary. And even then, it was brief, controlled, finished. The house felt different after that. Quieter, not empty, just settled. Chloe adapted faster than I expected, not because it didn't affect her, but because she didn't build her world on illusions anymore. She spent more time at the kitchen counter again, sketching, asking questions about the business, sometimes coming by the shops after school. I didn't push it. I just made sure everything she stepped into was real. The fourth location opened on schedule. Then a fifth. Expansion didn't slow down. If anything, it became cleaner, more focused. No distractions. No assumptions about what would always be there. I built systems that didn't rely on trust alone, because I understood something now that I hadn't before. Trust isn't protection. Verification is. Sometimes people ask me if I regret how I handled it, if I should have walked away quietly, if exposing everything was too much. I don't answer right away. I think about the backyard. Her voice. He won't know. I think about the letter on the plate. The look on her face when she realized silence wasn't to save her. Then I give them the only answer that makes sense. No, because I didn't destroy my life. I dismantled a lie, piece by piece, carefully, completely, and when it was over, there was nothing unstable left to stand on, only what I built myself. And this time, I made sure it couldn't be taken apart without me seeing it happen.